whatever your goals are this month, that's kind of what we're going to hit on. So this call, for some of you guys, you might think, you know, it's boring, but I know that there was times I was not doing these things, and I thought the call was boring too. If you don't think the call is boring, it's probably because you're plugging in. So I'm going to kind of go back to the basics. So in terms of back to the basics, you know, it goes back to, you have to inspect what you expect, right? So it's always going to go back to the numbers. And here's what I've always loved and hated about this industry is it's truly a numbers game. So the numbers are going to play themselves out, but you have to know how to play your numbers, right? If you don't know how many leads you bought, if you don't know how many dials you made, how many appointments you sat with, how many appointments you set up, how many no-shows you had, how many people you were able to help out, how many you weren't, and essentially what you yielded as an income result, you're never going to work your numbers backwards. So my numbers and Christina's numbers look completely different. My numbers and anybody on this call's numbers look completely different. Not because I'm better, you might actually be a lot better than me, but I know my numbers. So you got to learn your numbers and be able to backtrack this thing. Now, with that being said, the most important thing, in my opinion, that you can have in this business is a consistent schedule. If you do not stick to your schedule, you're going to find that this seems a lot more difficult than it actually has to be, right? So if you're a full-time agent here at Family First Life, you know, you're dialing on Monday for Tuesday and Wednesday, you're dialing on Thursday for Friday and Saturday if you're in home. Now, if you're doing telesales, that approach might look a little bit different, but not a whole lot different. And what I mean by that is, if you talk to Caitlin G, Caitlin will tell you she's in the office from this time to this time. She still has a set standard schedule that she's running week in and week out. So it's not like we're out here freestyling and it's working. You know, to freestyle in this business, it doesn't work, right? Because I can book one appointment and maybe I go to that person's home and they need the insurance and they want my help. But maybe I book 10 appointments the following, you know, dial day, and for whatever reason, that day just doesn't pan out for me. Now that's 11 appointments in a hypothetical week, right? We're told to run 30. What do I have to be mad about except that I didn't run my schedule, right? So being a full-time agent here, whatever that looks like for you, like it should look like you're dialing on Monday for Tuesday, Wednesday, you're dialing on Thursday for Friday, Saturday. If you're telesales, again, it might look a little bit different, but you should have a very, very, very in-depth schedule of what does this thing look like. And now, while you're building that schedule, sometimes you might be like, well, you know, this is a lot, or I don't know what you're thinking, but really more so where I'm going with this is, what are your goals here, right? Because I feel like oftentimes we can lead ourselves like blind and we have no idea where we're going. And then we're just going to arrive at whatever result that may be. And that's not going to work for us, right? It's not going to work long-term, okay? So if we have an actual goal in front of us, whether that be a personal goal, right? Because personal and business are going to always tie together, unfortunately, or fortunately, you get to pick that piece, right? But in terms of that, we have to look at it like, if I only ran 11 appointments out of 30, what do I need to change? What do I need more of? What do I need less of? What do I have to adjust, right? Because if I'm only able to book 11, then I probably have to buy more leads. I probably need to watch more trainings. I can't stress that enough, right? Like, point being is, guys, if you do not have a consistent schedule, you won't win here. You just won't. And I would be lying to every single person on this call if I told you that you would. Because the biggest thing that I've seen in being in the industry for 7 years, the people who are a flash in the pan, if you will, are usually the ones who are able to run a schedule for a week, and then they have a good week after that. And then they're just like doing whatever they want. And they're like, I don't know why this isn't working. Like, I'm still buying leads and making dials. Yeah, you're buying leads on Tuesday at 6:30 and making dials on Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 3. That's not going to work, guys. That does not work. It doesn't work. So if that was your plan, cross it out, right? And I'm not saying this to you guys because I think anybody on here is stupid or anything like that. It's actually the complete opposite. I think anybody on this team, and I've had the chance to speak to most, if not all of you guys, can absolutely 100% do this thing at a high level. I'm not confused by that at all, by the way. But what I'm saying is, if you wake up and you change your schedule each and every week, it's going to be a mess, like an actual mess. And I've just seen it too much through different organizations within our organization. The biggest flash in the pan is the person who changes their schedule 15 times a week. You can't do that. You have to run the same schedule every single week. So with that being said, to kind of hit on schedule, right? So like, what are your goals, right? If you're full-time and you're like, I don't want to run 30 appointments, that's cool, but be transparent with the person who's mentoring you so that they're able to help you get where you want to go. If you're part-time, I love part-time, like, but have a set schedule. I'm going to dial on this day, I'm going to run on this day, or I'm telesales on these 3 days, or whatever it is, but it has to be consistent. When it's not a consistent pattern, just like we can have high highs and low lows in sales, you're going to find yourself feeling really bad for yourself when really in reality, all you did was change your schedule and you didn't commit, right? So kind of to segue out of schedule, but also into what are you doing each and every day, there's essentially 3 different avenues we can be working under in Family First Life right now in terms of servicing our clients. We can be in-home, right? We can do telesales or virtual sales, or we can be running a hybrid model. Now, whichever one of those you're doing, I empower you to do it for at least 90 days before you're changing anything. Now, if you're just coming into the insurance industry and you've never wrote a policy before, sure, you can do telesales, but I'll be the first person to tell you, like, hey, you probably want to get some in-home exposure first. Sit with 50 to 100 people face-to-face, get the process down, why asking questions is important, and then hop back on 10 telesales in 90 days. Get the exposure, but you can't change what you're doing each and every day. It's like if you're trying to lose weight and you're like, well, I think I'm gonna try to cut out carbs today. And then like the next day you're like, well, my stomach still feels a little bloated, so I think I'm gonna cut out sugars today. And then you're like eating carbs, and then the next day you're like, well, I think that I cut out some sugars on Monday and some carbs on Sunday, and it's Tuesday, so I think I'm going to I'm going to put more vegetables in. Like, that never happened, not in a day, right? So what I'm saying is we need time to readjust to a different system. So if you're going from in-home to telesales, you have to expect the learning curve. You have to expect the downward trend in your numbers for a little while before it goes back up. But if you're in-home, be in-home. If you're telesales, be telesales. If you're hybrid, you better understand exactly what hybrid means to you. Whether that means you're in-home on Tuesdays and Fridays, and you're telesales on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Whatever that looks like, you have to have a very clear expectation, or it's going to become really difficult because you're going to be like, I don't know, because I'm buying leads in Nebraska and I don't even live in Nebraska. And now I have these leads because I'm doing telesales. It's like, stick with what you're doing, master it, and then you can try something else. For the most part, anybody on here, and guys, again, you can do whatever you want because everyone is so much different. But I empower anyone who's brand new, get started in the home. You will not be mad at yourself for doing it. But if you're getting started on telesales, that's great too. But just make sure it is very scheduled and consistent. We just got off a call with Erica Walker. She is not confused about her schedule. That's why she's helping 30, 40, 50 families a month with telesales, because she's not changing what she's doing every single week or every month, right? In this business, we can't measure it by a week. We can't measure it by a month sometimes even. So the smallest percentile we should be going off of is a month. After that, we should be looking at the quarter. And now the month, I say that in regards to, am I profitable, right? But the quarter, it's like you should be in home for a quarter. You should be doing telesales for a quarter. You should be hybrid for a quarter. And if you have to change that, change it today. Don't wait. Don't sit there and be like, oh, well, I think I'm going to do this. No, you pick it and do it because it was your choice, right? We all have a choice here. That's why we all probably work here. One of the reasons why, right? So we want to make sure whatever we're doing, we're just sticking with that because we can overcomplicate it. If someone's like, oh, Marysa, you can never sit face to face with the client again. It's like, okay, like, you know, like I figure it out and I would do telesales, but my learning curve is going to be a little bit rocky, right? Which, like, that's cool. I know a lot more about telesales now than I did a couple months ago. But my point being is, I'm not just going to wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm 100% telesales, because it's not going to work. Even though I've been in the industry 7 years, I'm going to have a dip. I'm going to start getting confused, and my mindset is going to be off. And I'm going to start blaming everyone around me. It's the leads. It's the people. It's the demographic. It's like, guys, look at this call right now. Look, the people who actually have their cameras on, thank you guys for having your cameras on. Love you guys. But look at this call right now. It's like a bag of Skittles, right? Like, so we all live in different areas of the United States for the most part. So what makes it demographically different? It doesn't. So don't head fake yourself, guys. In order to have a strong mindset in this business, we got to make sure whatever we're doing it consistently. Because if not, eventually our mind is going to trick us and be like, this doesn't work. Even though it worked for me last month and I helped 30 families, it doesn't work this month. It's not the system, it's you. Like, and it wasn't for me. It's like same thing. It's not. It wasn't the system. It was me, right? So I say these things from experience, right? So what's your long-term goal, right? Like, why did you come into this industry? What do you want it to look like in 30 days, 6 months, a year from now? What do you actually want it to look like? Again, if you don't know that, ask yourself. Take some time today to map that out, because it's going to be really hard to get there, or that much harder to get there if you have nowhere to go, right? So with that being said, schedule is huge. Goals are huge, you know, and also plugging in is huge. Again, going back to the people on this call right now, if you look at who's on the dial team and who gets on the dial team, the people, for the most part, who get on the dial team, their numbers are going in a very upward trend. People who don't, I mean, guys, I love you, but don't tell me you work full time and you're not on the dial team. Like, it's okay. I'm not mad at you. You're self-employed, but don't confuse yourself and be like, Marysa, I was dialing all day and you weren't even on the dial team. I'm just going to call it like it is, right? Like, I'm going to call a spade a spade. If you're not on the dial team and you're calling me for feedback, I'm going to help you. Don't get me wrong, but I'm also going to tell you and help you by telling you, you need to plug into the dial team. That should be everybody's like non-negotiable. Like, if you are full-time and fully committed to Family First Life, there is 0.0 reason why you should not be on that dial team. You're going to hear people lively overcoming things, and that's just really important. And people will be like, oh, well, they dial a different lead type than me. I dial a different lead type every single time I'm live on it. You know, like Valerie's over there dialing internet leads. Ronnie's over there dialing an array of mortgage mail. Bob's over there dialing an array of everything. Okay. Heather's over there doing telesales, right? So it's like, we got to plug in, guys. Utilize the people around you, because it's going to become important. So running the numbers, what does that mean? What it means is, how many leads did you buy? How many dials did you make? How many appointments did you have? Or how many presentations, if you're doing telesales, did you do? How many of those did you close? And then out of that, what is your income? Now work the numbers backwards. And if you do this, you do your numbers out, and you should do your numbers out for your whole insurance career. You do your numbers out on your dial tracker. You can always work them backwards after just 4 weeks, right? And then after that, we'll have a larger average. 4 weeks is the month, 12 weeks. We have the quarter average. Now we actually really know what you're looking at. But if you don't track your numbers, we don't know. You don't know, right? So help us help you. Track your numbers, join in on the dial team, plug in. We all want to help each other. And I think that the more we can see that, the more it's going to happen. So if you haven't been on the dial team, I'm not hating on you. I'm just telling you, get on the dial team, because it's really, really important. Plugging in, what else that means is, like, for example, if I point to anybody on this call right now and I say, who's your go-to trainer? You should be able to tell me who your go-to trainer is. Like, my go-to trainer, the person who sounds a lot like me, is Brandon Kitchens. Brandon Kitchens and Paul McLean. Every time Brandon Kitchens drops something new, I'm listening to it, because I sound like him. His attitude is like me. The way he works is like me. So every week I ask myself this, and I hope that it goes a far way with you guys, is what 3 audios did I listen to this week that are going to help me? So if you're on the phones and you're getting your butt kicked because everyone's telling you, I'm not interested, right? And you're like, it's like, there's only so many times that we can not have anything to say back, right? Like there's rebuttals. There's a billion videos out there with Family First Life of overcoming objections and rebuttals, right? That was in the training, right? Like I love you all, but we got to identify the people that we're going to be following in this business because it's going to be really important. So who's your go-to trainer? What audios do you listen to so repetitively that you could literally say them in your sleep? Like your role and purpose, which is what you say when you first get into the home. Guys, if you don't have one of those, get one today. Make it, type it out, send it to your manager and say, hey, can you look this over and can you make sure that, I got everything in here I should have so I can overcome these potential rebuttals on the front end, right? So what audios are you listening to? If you're on the phone and again, going back to, I'm not interested, and you keep getting that, what if your top 3 audios for the week should be a Family First Life, somebody that you like or resonate with, of how to overcome, I'm not interested, right? Like mine is, well, Christina, I'm really not interested either. It's just my job to get the information out. It takes me about 15 minutes. They have me wrapping up with some others in your area, both Friday as well as Saturday. What time are you usually home on Friday? Now, just because that works for me, it doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. But what it does mean is you have to find something. And again, you want to use that rebuttal use that overcoming that rebuttal by using it the same one every single time. So if you're going to say, I'm not interested either, my job's really simple, just to get the information you requested out to you. You want to make sure you're saying that, not for 1 call, not for 2 calls, but at least for your full dial day. So you can say, does that work for me or not? Because not everyone is receptive when I tell them, I'm not interested either, it's just my job to get the information out. But at least I know I took the extra step and tried. Because out of all those times that I'm going to try and push harder, instead of just being like, okay, sounds good, bye, which we're all guilty of, we've all been there, I'm going to push, and I have a lot more likelihood of reaching that person and setting up an appointment with them. And those people who are harder to book are the best in the house. Or like for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason is, but it's just the best in the house. So you want to make sure you're plugging in. Who are you listening to? Who's your go-to trainer? What 3 audios are you listening to each and every week? Do you have the training schedule? That's a big one, guys. Like, do you have the training schedule? Guys, if we worked in W2, corporate America, if there was a training schedule, you better trust and believe we'd all be on there 5 minutes early, right? But because we're doing it for ourselves, it's like, why are we going to give ourselves the short end of the stick, right? Like, why wouldn't we show up for ourselves more than we would show up for somebody else, right? Like, everyone on this call, thank you guys for hopping on, and I love you all. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not doing this call necessarily particularly just for me. I'm doing this call because I feel like the group needs to hear it, right? So we want to make sure we're plugging in. Your training schedule, if you don't know it, don't be scared to text your upline and say, hey, can you shoot me over the newest training schedule? It will probably be the best text or call that they get that day, because that's how we know you care. Like when people are posting in the Slack, like, hey, I'm not able to get on the call. It's like, okay, we know you care. Like, we definitely know you care. We're not confused because you're plugging in, you're making an effort. And this is you have to be a student of this business and an ongoing student of this business. So each and every week, it's like, what are you doing to better yourself, right? Like whether that's in your personal life or on the business side, but what does that look like? Are you reading? Are you listening to audios? Are you listening to podcasts outside of the business? Like, what are you doing to feed yourself? Are you working out? Are you eating healthy? Are you doing what you want to do essentially? Like, what does that look like? So your training schedule needs to just be like up to par. You got to be plugged in on that. And here's the thing, guys, if we have Paul McLean, whose group is, issuing more than most, actually more, I should say more like issuing half the company's business right now, guys, like Paul McLean is on the next level. When I'm on the TNL, it says Paul McLean's watching with you. If Paul McLean is plugging in, okay, why aren't we? You know, like, you with me? Like, because sometimes, like, I've gotten calls from Paul right after the TNL. Like, you just see that TNL with Zach T, he crushed it, blah, blah, blah. And I like, it's like, what am I gonna look like if I'm like, oh no, Paul, I didn't hop on that one. I was too good to hear what Zach T had to say. What? Right? It doesn't even sound right. So guys, no one's perfect, but if you're like, I'm really bad at keeping a schedule, what I always did to make sure I plugged into the training calls is I set an alarm clock on my phone, because I had to be that annoying to myself that an alarm had to go off for me to be like an adult and get on a call. But that's what I had to do, so I wasn't ashamed of it. Set an alarm 10 minutes before each call starts. That way it's a trigger to get on the call. If you have to do that until it's a rhythm, do it. You won't be mad at yourself, right? Also, going back to your goals, knowing your goals is important, but also knowing what's your next promotion, right? Like what does that look like? What do you have to do to get there, right? We have a really laid out comp grid, right? So wherever you're at, let's just say you're at a 105. What do you have to do to get to a 110? If the answer is, I don't know, I'm going to tell you, look up the comp grid and start knowing, because again, you're shooting in the dark. You don't have a goal, right? So make sure that whatever you're looking at, your goal each and every week or month, that you're hitting it, but you also realize like, hey, you know, like if I help one more, you don't want to be in a place where you're like, if I helped one more family last month, I would have hit that promotion, but I didn't know. Guys, this is everywhere, the comp grid. It is very easily laid out. You have to know what is your next promotion and what is it going to take for you to get there. And when there's a real goal, there's a vision. And Paul talks about this all the time, but one thing that really helped me a lot when I first came into this business, and even just actually like till this day, a vision board. And some of you guys might be like, okay, I should just get off this call now. You probably should then. Love you too. If you have a vision board in front of your face, you're looking at exactly what you want to happen. So if you're at, you know, a 105, but you want to be an integrity partner, print out the logo and put it there, right? If you want to have XYZ house, you want your house to look this way, you want your car to look this way, you want your kids to go to this school, whatever it is that you want, put it on that board and just look at it. It's meant to literally be looked back at. And the funny part about vision boards is that I do feel as though they do attract things. Things that are on my first vision board, I'm like, you know, I found one when my sister and I were moving out of, you know, the house that we grew up in, just like about a year and a half back. And it was the first one I had ever made. And I wanted to just throw it out. And then I was like, you know what, let me look at this thing. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, I did most of these things on here and I didn't even realize it. But it's because your mind doesn't know the difference between what's actually happening and like what you think is happening, right? So if you're thinking things into reality, they're going to happen. That's the law of the universe. Love it or hate it, it is what it is. But point being, you need to know where your next promotion is. If you don't know where that is, I mean, like, is that your upline's job to be like, oh, by the way, you know, by the way, Heather, you know, it looks like you might qualify for a promotion. Like, no, like, you know, Heather's in me and Christina's space, like, by the way, I have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G to get to this level, right? Like, we got to be not confused about how we're getting to our next level, right? And then what does the end goal look like? Don't lose sight of that. People underestimate what they can do in a year, but overestimate what can be done in a day, right? Some of us want our whole business to change today, which, by the way, it's dialed in. It can change today. But my point really more so being is, what can we get done in this year? Like, what do you want to wrap this year up with? We have a little under 4 months left. Like, what is that going to look like? Let's start asking ourselves better questions, just like in the home or with clients. We ask better questions, we yield a better result. So I hope that all makes sense. And just a couple other things I want to hit on that I think are just important for everybody to just remember is, first of all, you have to believe in what you're selling. If you don't believe in life insurance, it's going to be really hard to sell, okay? If you can't close yourself, you can't outsell your level of belief, right? Like, you just can't. Like, if you're like, oh, that's really expensive. Like, And I love all my new agents, by the way. I was a new agent before too, okay? I'm not losing sight of that, trust and believe. But when a new agent calls, they're like, hey, I'm sitting here with Betty and they're 80, Betty's 80 years old. And, like the $10, it's just really expensive. It's really expensive. Whoa, pump the brakes. First of all, you're not Betty. Second of all, you can't work from your thought process, right? You have to believe in what you're selling. It's like, okay, the payment might be $300 a month, but guess what? That might make perfect sense for Betty because she's 80 years old and she wants to make sure that that burden doesn't fall on her kids, right? Like that makes perfect sense to me, right? So the level of belief, do you believe in what you're selling? And if you don't, start asking yourself why, and definitely start talking to your upline about belief. You have to believe in yourself, but you have to believe in what you're selling first, right? So work in council. I talk about this all the time. Massive action, constant correction. Go out there, make a mess, right? We're like, get on the phones and you're like, I need to know all these products. No, you don't. There is a reason why we only start you guys with 4 carriers. It's not because we're being mean. It's not because of anything of that sort. It's because we want to make sure you're comfortable with those 4 carriers. And it's a lot easier. They all have the same products, right? For the most part. Like those 4 carriers that we give you guys, like the startup carriers, if you will, or 5 with Prosperity, those are going to make sure you can cover pretty much every single person you're sitting down with. More carriers will open up, so don't stress yourself out about that. But if you're not working and counseling with your upline, it doesn't matter how much you learn about National Life Group if you've never written an insurance policy. You don't have National Life, okay? Like, I say that with so much love. I'm being so serious. Like, focus on the basics, or you're going to find that this business looks a lot more complicated than it is. Let us help you undercomplicate it. By undercomplicating it, what I'm trying to say is calling from the home. If you're too proud to call from the home and then you call when you leave and you're like, this is what happened. Don't get me wrong. I always like that this is what happened. However, we can't help you after this already happened, right? Call from the home. Get advice from the home. Don't be scared to call from the home. That is the point. That's what your upline is there for. They're not like, oh, I'm not like, oh God, Valerie's calling. I'm like, Valerie's calling, she's in a home. She probably like, she just got a quick question, right? Like, let's do this thing, right? It's not that deep, guys. So massive action, what does that mean? That doesn't mean we sit there and we wait for our writing codes for 3 weeks and we give ourselves excuses as to why we can't get on the phones. Massive action means we submit our agent code, we submit our contracting, right? We know it's coming back, okay? And as long as we have Prosperity and paper applications, you can go out and write business today. Prosperity turns over in about 24 hours. It's like boom. It's like magic. Okay, guys? So massive action is the person who's on the phone saying, I don't have a plan B right now. And maybe I don't have all my agent codes either. But I'm committed to this business and I'm committed to myself. And I told myself I could do this and I'm not letting me down. Right? Not letting me down ever. And neither should you guys. So massive action means that you're on the phone and you're dialing. You're on the dial team and you're dialing, right? You're plugging in and you're dialing. You're not taking 3 weeks to get started. Because the biggest thing I see in the insurance industry across the board is just people getting started to get started to get started to get started, and they don't ever get started. And then it's paralysis by analysis. Because you're like, well, I read here that, oh, it's like, okay, stop reading. Please stop reading. Only read the phone script. Only the phone script. Book the appointments. Get in front of people or get on the phone. Just start doing it. Start getting uncomfortable because these are things you're going to have to do in order to grow here, right? So do it first, day one. And then guess what? You're in the house and, you're like, you printed the wrong paper application. I mean, yeah, that is annoying. However, it's not the end of the world. Constant correction. Call your upline. Hey, this is what I have on me. What would you do? We're going to help you guys. Again, so it's always coming back to that, but you have to take the action. We can't take it for you, right? And then the constant correction part is being willing to reach out. Like this is something when I first came into the industry, I was 20 and I was like, I was like 2 + 2, I think is 4, like I'm half kidding. But I was just not really all with it. And I was scared to ask for help because I thought people would think that I was stupid. I thought people would think like, wow, like this girl should already have that done by now, or she's undereducated, or maybe she shouldn't even be in this industry. It's the exact opposite. People who do not reach out for help when they need help, it's like you're only hindering yourself. You're going to end up in the same situation at some day and time, and you're not going to know how to work your way out of it, right? So reach out and ask for help. That's really, really, really important. Your upline wants to talk to you as long as you're working. And I say that in the most loving way. Like, I love talking to people who are excited to get started. I love talking to people who are busting it on the phone and are like, hey, I made 500 dials, I talked to 50 people, and I booked 8, but I'm hopping back on for a PM dial session, and this is what's gonna happen. Because they're excited, they're taking action, and they're taking steps. And even if it's, hey, I've made 500 dials, my biggest objection I'm getting is, I'm not interested. How do you overcome that? Now that's a great question. All right. So my point is you want to make sure you're reaching out to your upline because they can help you. That's all anyone wants to do that you're reaching out to is help you. But make sure you're reaching out to the right crowd, because there are going to be people that are, like I'll call them like the Debbie Downers or the energy vampires, right? I read this book, The Energy Bus, when I was like 12, and like I'll never forget it. It's the best book ever. And they talk about energy vampires. In this business, energy vampires are the people who are also not moving. And then like you get to call them and be like, hey, like I called, I made 10 dials today and like I didn't book any appointments. Like I made 10 dials today and didn't book any appointments. Everybody on this call probably made 10 dials and didn't book it. That is very normal. It's very normal. But the person who's going to sit on the phone with you be like, yeah, I made 25 and I didn't book any either. So I guess this probably doesn't work. You're talking to the wrong person, man. Hang up on that person and block their number, because they're not going to serve you in this industry. And unless you want to get out of the industry, don't do that to yourself. Or if you want to be identified as an energy vampire on the team, don't do that to yourself, right? Don't do that to other people. Don't mess with other people's success. That's not okay, not cool, guys. And then commitment to ongoing self-improvement and growth, right? Work on yourself more than your business. It's, they all correlate, right? Like, it's like, so like, what are we doing, right? Like, are we really working on ourselves more than our business? Do we read it all? Are we a student of the FFL training YouTube channels? Are we a student of the training schedule, right? Do we plug into everything? Plugging into conference calls should be your #1 priority over everything, because what they're going to do, they're going to realign you and get you back in place. Usually, you just got to keep plugging in, right? So change. What do you have to change, right? If you're committed to ongoing self-improvement, we're always committed to change too, right? I know that I change all the time. There's certain things that I do right, wrong, and different that have to change, right? Where are we changing? What did we change this week, this month? Or what are we going to change, right? And then taking 100% accountability for your life. Like, when that set into me, like, you have to take 100% of accountability for what you do or don't do in this life. Like, start doing it, because your later self is not going to be mad, right? Like, my younger self is thankful that I was in this industry and I worked 80 hours a week at a captive company and didn't know anything but how to write life insurance at 20, and like didn't even want to go out, and because I was so focused on what's next, how can I grow, what's next, how can I grow, what's next, how can I grow. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm so great, but what I'm saying is, once I overcame that fear of people think that I'm an idiot and people think this, who cares what people think, first of all, right? Like, who cares? That's free, right? And also, you're upline again, they're there to help you. So if you don't reach out, you're never going to come to a realization that, hey, sometimes it's a couple of small tweaks and adjustments. Sometimes it's the opening on your phone script saying, Christina, versus, hello, Miss Christina, right? Sometimes that's all it is. That's all it is, right? It's a small tweak or adjustment. And taking 100% responsibility for my life, what that means is I know that I can go to sleep at night knowing that I did the best I could that day. And if I didn't, being able to be accountable to myself enough to say, I could have done better today. And also knowing I helped everyone in the way that I could have helped them that day, whether that be my clients or the agents that I'm working with, or the company. Like, that's what it means to me. taking 100% responsibility, but also knowing like I am 100% responsible, like to feed myself, like, right? Like none of us are going to go a whole day without water, like, unless it's forced. So stop going a whole day without water, AKA self-accountability, self-reflection, growth, right? All of these things are in our face. Start utilizing them. Start utilizing the resources and people that you have in front of you. And then associating with the right people, which I hit on this a little bit, but learning how to develop relationships with people who are like-minded or people who are heading where you want to go or are already at where you want to go. One of the biggest reasons I make it a point to talk to Paul more than once a week is because, yeah, Paul is my direct upline, if you will, but at the same time, that's not why. It's because Paul is where I want to be. So in order to get there, my thought process as it stands today is not going to get me there. But being able to work off of other people's thought processes that are ahead of me is going to help me get there that much faster. And that goes for everyone on this call, right? Find people who are doing whatever you want to do at a higher level than you and that have a good mindset and are positively influencing, and talk to them. Build a relationship with them. And communicate with a positive attitude and always protect your mindset. I think that that's really important. You got to protect your own mindset. If someone calls you and just what they're saying to you is kind of just out of line, you got to tell them like, hey, like, this business is 95% mindset. I can't really have my mindset messed with right now, but talk to you later, and guys, this isn't always going to be like this perfect, like a butterfly. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that we can help one another by believing in what we're selling, massive action, constant correction, working counsel, whatever you want to call it, commitment to ongoing self-improvement and ongoing self-growth, and association. Those 4 things right there are going to help us go from here to here, whatever that is. It could be like, I want to bake cakes better. Okay, like, like if I knew Betty Crocker, I'd call her if I wanted to learn how to bake cakes on her, right? Like I would find her number, My point being is whatever someone's really good at, find that person, seek them out, make sure that, they have a positive mindset and talk to them. Do that and you're going to see that your business, it doesn't have to be that deep. A couple other things I do just want to hit on is convention. So you guys just saw Christina went over in the slideshow. Annual convention is February 1st to February 4th or 5th, I believe, 4th. Guys, get yourself there. We are like 5 months out. If you haven't booked it yet, book it, set up the babysitter. This is the one time in the whole year that the whole entire company comes together for a massive, massive sales training. It's amazing. And each and every year that I've left one of those since I've been with Family First Life, I feel reinvigorated or feel like I have a good place to get where I want to go. I go in there with a goal. I go in there with, I'd like to be able to do this at that point in time. And I seek out people and talk to people I want to talk to and make sure that by the time I leave, I have my questions answered face to face, which is an amazing, amazing thing. In terms of business, this is going to take a quick, turn real quick. And I'm going to wrap it up kind of here in just a second. But in terms of business, this is really important. So when we're talking about submitting an application, the way we want to have that expectation for the client is like, we want to be telling the client, like if I'm sitting down with Christina, I don't want to be telling Christina like, so Christina, what's a good day of the month you want your payment to happen? Because then if today's the 8th, she's going to be like, I don't know, the 5th, right? And then I'm going to be like, okay. And then I get to backdate it into October 5th. Now, 2 things happen here, okay? First and foremost, you're leaving your client unprotected. That's really important because they're getting approved on the spot, but then the date is back, okay? So this is what we call backdating a policy. You want to set the expectation that you are not backdating the policy unless there is a very good reason, and there are scenarios, and I know Social Security, things like that come into play. However, we want to remember that if it's the 8th of the month and we're sitting down with, Francis and he's 70 and we're showing him a premium and he's like, I like the $48 a month. If it's the 8th of the month and Francis doesn't have $48 in his account, That's concerning if he just got paid on the 3rd from his Social Security. So what I would do at that point is circle back with Francis, essentially like, Francis, we can, if we really have to push it out, we can. However, there's a couple of things I have to let you know here. First and foremost, you don't have coverage until then, okay? And then second of all, you want to let your client know, Francis, I don't want you to forget about me because you're going to see the draft come out in a month from now, right? It's like, guys, like that's not good business. If Francis doesn't have $48 today on the 8th, like why is he going to have it on the 3rd next month? He's probably not, unless there was like this big thing that happened, which like there can only be so many Bandcamp stories, right? So my point in saying that is you want to make sure that if you're backdating policies, that you understand why you're doing it and that there's a solid reason behind it. And really the only reason typically that I bump into, and I do work a lot of final expense as well, is towards the very, very end of the month, like tail end. I'm talking like the 28th to the 31st of the month. They're like, if it could come out on the 3rd, that'd be great because, I don't want to have a couple bucks in that account. That's normal and fine. But guys, we shouldn't be pushing it out weeks. Like maybe a day, 2 days, cool. But it shouldn't be going on a month. They're going to forget. It's not good business. The persistency of that business is a lot more likely to decrease, okay? So if we cannot backdate policies, that would be great. And the way that all of our e-apps are set up, they're set up beautifully. So if I'm sitting down with, Christina, I'm gonna tell Christina like, hey, Christina, so you wanna expect so congratulations, you were approved for the coverage, right? We always wanna congratulate them. Now, Christina, like I mentioned in the application, because I'm gonna mention it 3 times, like I mentioned in the application, Christina, you want to expect that $78.03 to come out either tomorrow or 3 business days max. You're going to see on your bank statement, it's going to be Americo that is going to show up on your bank account or whatever carrier it is, right? So I'm letting Christina know, reiterating, just like I told you on the application, it's going to occur. Cool, because that way it's like, guys, it's bad business if we put it through and we don't tell them it's going to draft. Like that's also bad business. Don't do that. You have to just set the proper expectation. And going back to my example of Francis with his $48 premium on the 8th of the month, what I would probably ask Francis is, Francis, no disrespect, but if you don't have $48 today on the 8th of the month, like what's going to change going into October? Like, did you drop, like, you have a bill that's dropping off or like, what's happening? And they'll tell you, you know what I mean? Sometimes they have like, a true valid answer. That's great. Again, there's a one time for everything. But guys, if all of your policies are backdated, reassess what you're saying, okay?